governments are run, why whenever money is saved, there seems to be virtually an insistence on coming back as soon as the savings are identified and saying, but we found another way to spend it on the same thing. I think a lot of people would sort of say, well, gee, if you can save our money, then save it and apply it to something else as opposed to dreaming up new ways to spend it. And in this case, what you originally had before I'll call it lucked out and got a bid that was, within the original envelope was something that took a savings that was achieved for reasons explained and put it over somewhere else. As good as the Luminous Vale project may be as something that could be iconic. But the second part that bothers me even more and that I think we have to address, and I'm telling you as the mayor, I'm going to use my own determination and energy to try and address this because I think it's fundamental to the lack of confidence people have in us, which is the approach that seems to be taken, and I don't understand how or why it happens the way it does, but it seems to be an approach that says that when people are doing the original estimates way back when, that there isn't the care taken to actually avoid the situation that comes up then over and over again where the council approves based on the best estimate put in front of them a project, see Nathan Phillips Square file, see Luminous Vale file, and somehow later when you get half the work done and it's virtually impossible to stop the project, you find out that the estimate was half of what it actually would have cost to do the job. And so we have these tremendous overages in budget, which I think discredit all of us and, quite frankly, discredit our professional public service as well. And I think there's two people that might be given some responsibility for this situation. The one is those doing the estimating, and the second group is us as politicians, and I now include myself in that group because I think we're often perhaps prepared to accept these estimates without doing our homework to say, is this really what it's going to cost, so that we know we might well decide not to do things if we thought that the budget was going to come in. In this case, it started, as we heard Mr. Williams say, at $1.8 million. It'll end up at $6 million when Phase 2 is done. So that's a difference of like 300% plus. And so somehow it seems impossible to me that even though there's been the passage of time, it could have gone 300% up for a project. There was some mistake in the process there somewhere. If the people we represent operated this way, if they started out with a house renovation that was going to be $25,000 and they just said, well, just go ahead with it based on some estimate that was on the back of an envelope, and it ended up at 60, they'd be toast. They get a line of credit from their bank manager that might have, $5,000 or maybe $7,500 of leeway in it, but not 300%. And that's why they look at us and say, and by the way, I'm conscious that I've got another minute and a half, even though that clock could argue otherwise. That's why they look at us and say, well, why is government any different? If charities or businesses or households operated this way, they'd all go broke. So I guess all I want to say is that I just think that we can't afford to continue to do this, both from the standpoint of our finances, where there are so many things we know are not adequately funded in the city, whether it's transit or housing or, you know the list better than I do. Daycare. I mean, there's a long list. We can't afford to go on this way where through, I'll call it carelessness or lack of diligence or something at the beginning, we end up later having to pour much more money into something at the end that is then denied some other priority we have. And to me, whether it's capital or operating, it's money that's coming out of the pockets of the taxpayers. And so I just hope that we can decide together that we're going to, and it's not meaning to single this out for a whipping, this thing. I mean, it's just an example, though, that I just think it indicates something that needs our attention. It's the process that leads to this, and so it's why I wanted to move this amendment that says both that we'll move ahead, frankly and fortunately, on or about the original budget for Phase 1. It's only Phase 1. And then secondly, that we do ask our city manager and his staff to take a look at ways in which, if there are savings from the Pan Am game, and I'd frankly say we should apply this to anything else, that we find ways to redirect that money, at least have a discussion about it, and we do, but without sort of automatically assuming it's going to go into the same bailiwick and just be spent on something that somebody dreamt up because we saved money. So end of ranting and raving for today, but it's just, I think we pay a huge price for this. We do as elected representatives, and I think our public service friends do too. I think it discredits government, and I think we have to fix it. So thank you. And who else? Councillor.